Today on Virginia Legends podcast, I have Mark Seidenberg, tennis coach and basketball coach at Mills Godwin High School for many years. More importantly, he was a really good friend of my UVA roommate, Rob White, who coached basketball there as well. Mark has recently been nominated for the Hall of Fame and the VHSL Hall of Fame. He's going to go in this year with the 2025 class, especially for his work in tennis. Coach, great to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
No, of course. Well, look, I didn't even really know you coached tennis. I can't believe when I saw your name on the list of going in, because I had saw Luther Bates on there, guy I used to officiate in basketball when I was at UVA, a guy from Fluvanna County. I saw your record. You won 16 straight regional titles as a girls tennis coach at Mills Godwin. Had
Right.
already won a state title at Douglas Freeman, where you went to school. You won 11 state titles, tennis titles. Just an amazing record. You were the basketball coach, 11 years, varsity basketball coach there. You're the second all-time wins in tennis, 432. I think you retired briefly in 2019. You had some heart issues, but you did come back, I believe, into 2021. But anyway, you played your basketball at Freeman. Went to Randolph Macon, played for the legendary Hal Nunnally for a year. After which you started coaching at Amelia Academy. Pretty short commute there. Then you started at Freeman as a coach. You started coaching tennis because that got you a job in there, and you didn't know much about it, but you won a state title. Took the job at Mills Godwin because you wanted to coach basketball. I guess your first coaching love, and then you picked up the girls team 2 years later. Did I get the broad sketches of your career right, Coach?
Yes, yes, yes. I've I've always wanted to be a coach. Um, Even when I was a high school player, my dad would get rec league teams, and he would unofficially be the coach, but I would coach it. So even in high school, I was uh, I was always wanting to coach, and I appreciate both my parents helping me along the way. Um, the person you said I had the second most wins. Um, the person who has the most wins, I played for him JV basketball, Larry Parpet at Freeman. He's still coaching, winning
Wow.
state championships. He is my mentor in the coaching business. Um, we're still good friends. We actually just traveled together to watch Randolph Macon Wednesday night, and you know he he inspired me as well to be a coach and a teacher, and he has the most wins in VHSL history. So we're 1-2, and if there was someone who was going to have more wins than me, I'm so happy it's him.
Yeah, and
Um,
he's still adding to his record. It sounds
he,
like. Well, let's talk about coaching tennis. Now, I mean, that level of success is unbelievable, right?
Mhm.
And I know it can't be just coaching because you're a great coach in basketball and you didn't win 16 straight regional championships in basketball. And I've seen your teams play. I know how good you are. What explains the level of success at Mills Godwin in tennis? Is um, is the demographic perfect for tennis? Is the reputation of the program, of course, and your great coaching? Do kids move in there just to play tennis? What explains that level of success?
Well, I mean, first of all, you gotta. Always treated it as a program. Um, you know, I made sure I was always asking and following the girls in the off season. Like any sport, you want them to play multiple sports, but you I took an interest in them in their tournaments, um, in their lessons, and things like that. Um, so we certainly had a lot of talent, and I cannot thank the pros around here, especially Raintree Swim and Racket Club, for training so many of these young ladies. But always treated the the team as a not an individual sport. Um, we did many things to make sure that everybody felt important, everybody had a job, everybody shared in the success, and you win with talent. And we had a lot of talent, had great assistant coaches, but you know, to have that consistency, the girls just never wanted to lose. The next group didn't want to be that first group that didn't win a region or play for a state championship, things like that. So,
Is tennis important enough, or high school tennis important enough for parents to move into a school district? Because many sports, like for example soccer,
right,
kids generally don't move for high school soccer because their club team is more important. Whereas in football and basketball, they may move because the high school team is still more important than their club or the AAU team. What
right.
about tennis? Would you ever move to Mills Godwin because you wanted to play for that program?
We did not have a lot of players move into the area just for tennis. Um, we had some transfers, but not very many at all. It was mostly girls that grew up in the area. Um, to be honest, some I think in Richmond, um, they were encouraged. The very good players were encouraged to play high school tennis. I know up your way, Northern Virginia, there were plenty of girls that did not play high school tennis that were really good. Um, and we never said that, hey, if you play at Godwin, you're going to be better than if you took individual lessons.
Mhm.
But I think it says a great deal when someone commits to a team for 3 or 4 months.
So the rumors like John Marshall getting players from New York City that didn't apply to the Mills Godwin tennis
No,
program.
no, no, no. We uh the we down here we have a center at each school, and if you apply to that center, you can come to that school. Ours was the Math Science Center, and
Uh,
now it's the Todd Phillips Medical Center. And we did get some players come to the center, but um, they had to apply. They didn't get special treatment. If they got in and they chose us, then they could be on the team.
what is the relationship between a tennis coach and their players? Like, for example, they all have the best players have personal coaches, and
Right.
their games are very developed in terms of, especially, I guess, their singles games. And as a tennis coach, you're probably sort of like a baseball manager in that you may not have to get as technical with each player because you may have a forehand, someone who's dominant with a forehand topspin. You may have a, I guess, serving volley and is gone, but you may have different styles. So, as a tennis coach, what is your effect on the way each player plays?
Yeah, we individually, we really didn't try to change anything. The one thing that I learned in tennis as a team very early, the really good players have their coaches. We're not going to need to really work as much on their individual game. What we're going to work on is doubles and being aggressive at the net, which a lot of girls felt uncomfortable at the net. Um, my second year at Douglas Freeman, when I was a boys coach, we lost to Langley 5-4 in the state championship, and we lost 2 out of 3 doubles. And I felt we got out coached that day. Um, I didn't have a good lineup. Their doubles were just, they played better. And I promised myself, as long as I was going to be a tennis coach, we would never lose another match because we didn't practice doubles enough. And the very next year, we were down 4-2 to Langley after singles, and we swept the doubles and beat them. Um, they won 6 championships in 8 years, and they lost once to us when I was at Freeman, and then they lost once to Godwin um, uh, when I was there, but not the boys' coach. So they had a great run, and that's what I practiced a great deal with. in my practices at Godwin were just a lot of doubles, a lot of net play, a lot of being aggressive in singles, and leave the strokes to the pros, the construction of the points, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, how did you put your teams together? Was it a strict ladder where your players would have to play their way up to the top six and I guess to the top 12 to even make the team? In doubles, how did you make your teams? If you had a player that had a lot of potential, but you felt like early in the year that they're out of season, they're nervous, would you put them higher than they belong because you know they're better than that? So how did you form your lineups?
Yeah, so when I first started, we were in the fall, so we could have a little bit longer practices. We could have a little bit longer challenges. I tell you, the way the tennis is constructed now, boys and girls are at the same season. They start the end of February. It's hard to have long practices, so it's so cold. But back in the spring, in the fall, I could let them play 2 out of 3 sets or play an 8 game pro set, um, and kind of really see um, who belonged where. So I had an idea of these 8 girls were vying for 6 spots, but the top 2 girls were way better than everybody else. So they just didn't challenge as much. Um, the one thing I preach from day one is that every spot, it counts the same number of points when you play a match. So whoever plays number 6, that point matters just as much as the number one. So I tried to convey, listen, it's important to be in the lineup, but every point is important. And, um, you know, we won some state championships where we lost at 1 and 2 singles, won 3 through 6 singles, and then at least one of the doubles. Um, you win with depth. You can have the best players, and we beat some teams that had better players than us, but overall, we had better depth. And I think from a standpoint of preaching from day one, it's a team sport. It's a team sport. I think that really helped us.
Yeah. Well, my team, Robinson, got to the state final in tennis. I wasn't scoring, but I was on the team.
Mhm.
But my coach didn't spend a lot of time worrying about number one. As a matter of fact, I thought the 2 and 3 probably, or the 4 could have been better than the one. But he
Right,
had the one there because he knew he was going to win the 2 through the 6. So even if we threw away the one,
right,
we'd win the rest of them. Is
right.
that a strategy that you see around
Right.
the game?
So you're not allowed to stack.
Mhm.
You have to play one has to be better than two,
Mhm.
two has to be better than three. Now, one thing I've done before is if I think 2 girls are fairly equal, and let's just say this happened one year, our 3 beat the 4 in a challenge. Well, I never challenged them again. So, there were times like in states where um, it was more difficult to win at 3, but yet we would win at 4. And I don't feel like I was stacking because it was a legitimate victory earlier in the season. So, you know, that's the thing. Like, basketball, I don't have to play one on one to see which 5 players get to play.
Yeah.
You know, your 5 best offensive players don't always get to be on the floor. Tennis, you're supposed to play your 6 top players. And it's difficult because I've taken a number 6 out before. Um, I took a senior out once and put a freshman in before regionals and states. And that was very difficult. But she had lost a tough match or two. And I just I had to give the freshman a chance. Um, One of the hardest things I ever had to do was my daughter Haley was on the team, and her senior year she played 3 doubles. Well, she's a type 1 diabetic,
Mm.
and she kept having incidents on the court. And it got to a point where right before regionals started, um, I wasn't sure if she could make it through a match without her sugar dropping. And she did everything the right way, but it just was something that was out of control a little bit. And so I had to pull her from the lineup.
Mm.
And so I pulled my own daughter because that was the best thing for the team. And I tell you, as a senior, she was the loudest cheerer
Mm.
when matches were going on. And she understood winning a state championship, which we did that year, was very important.
Yeah.
She
You
was,
know,
she was,
so you're talking about, we were talking about earlier, one-on-one training, their coach, their tennis coach. Um, do you see elements of that in basketball in your latter years of coaching? Now the players have one-on-one coaches in basketball. This is something that was unheard of when me and you played, but there's a lot of one-on-one training, small group training, a lot of coaching from the stands by these trainers. Did you see elements of that in tennis? Is it gotten similar in basketball now?
so it's like, yeah, it's a little, tennis is so different because when you're on the outside of the court, you can talk to the players on every odd game or after every odd game. And, if I had $1 for every time a parent came up to me right before a changeover and the parent is saying, can you go tell so to do this or do that? Um, I know there's certain coaches that stand so far away from the parents. Um, but for the most part, parents were really good. But yeah, you've got sometimes the pros come to watch their students play. Um, you've got parents and other relatives that are watching, and it's how much do you tell the kid on a changeover and stuff like that. A lot of times they don't want to hear what their parents have to say. Um, but by the way, as you said, individual, one of the things I'm doing in retirement is in front of my house. I have a full court in my cul-de-sac, and I actually still give basketball lessons,
Oh,
one lessons, all
yeah.
shooting, all shooting.
Yeah, I think Rob said you did pretty well during COVID too. You're able to keep
Yeah,
kids keep
yeah.
kids uh, active. So over time, with this level of success you had in tennis, I mean, basketball is pretty all encompassing. When you're a basketball coach, you're a really big person in the community. When you're in season, it's like you're on stage. The gyms can be packed. It's really prestigious. Tennis is a little, below the radar in terms of the community.
Right.
Did you ever consider yourself a tennis coach first, or were you always a basketball coach first?
I mean, basketball was my first love. That's I tried to treat my tennis program um, like what I would do in a basketball program. Um, so yeah, the one thing is tennis is free. You don't have to pay to come watch us. Um, it's these days state championships are sometimes after graduation.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, so it's hard to get a great following. But um, the one thing about winning the region each year was we always got to host the first round of states at our school. And the kids loved it because often you would play during the school day, like at 11 a.m. And so a lot of uh, teachers would bring their classes out to watch. So, for at least one match, they got to play in front of, hundreds of students. So
Yeah.
that was nice.
Yeah. Are the level of nerves the same between basketball and tennis? Or do you get the same kind of nerves between and the ability to control the outcome? Obviously, the outcomes were much more favorable in tennis than basketball. But are the level of nerves and the stress the same for a tennis or basketball coach?
Yeah, tennis, I just feel like you don't have as much uh, control. And plus, there's 30 seconds or so in between each point a lot of times. So, you're just nervousness just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But yeah, you know, um, I got much more nervous than the girls did, watching. Uh, um, Over the years, I had some great assistant coaches, and what we would do is um, I would kind of oversee everything, and then we would break up who watched whom. So, for example, uh, I had one coach just watching the 1 and 2 players, somebody else the 3 and 4. I might take one player at 5, and then another coach was coaching the 6. So you were nervous for that match, but overall, you know, um, you didn't have much control because the other coaches were the ones working with those players during the matches.
Yeah. Were the things that you learned as a tennis coach and your success as a tennis coach that made you a better basketball coach?
I think so. I'd like to think so. Um, you know, uh, the patience, that's, you know, I didn't always have the best patience, especially, if you get mad at tennis during a tennis match, you can't talk to the player for another couple minutes, sometimes, 2 games.
Mhm.
So by the time if you were frustrated with the first 2 points, you've got 2 games to calm down. And so, in that respect, I tried to be better on the basketball court. Um, and I like to think tennis helped some. But if you ask some of my basketball players, they would probably say I was still, pretty aggressive and got angry quicker than I should.
Yeah. Well, how is, I went to the US Open this year with a client, first time ever.
Yeah,
I told you I played tennis and I played a lot of tennis when I was in college and when I was in law school and stuff. But I got away from the game.
right.
So, went to the US Open and I really, again, I haven't followed much over the years. And I can't believe that players don't serve and volley anymore, which was such a huge part of the game back when I was young. It's out of the game now. What are some of the ways that tennis has changed? And are these changes, in your opinion, been good for the game?
Um, yeah, it's everybody's so much more aggressive, especially from the ground, from the baseline, trying to hit winners from back at the baseline. Um, you're right. A lot of people do not like to serve and volley. Um, uh, Trying to get a player to the net is very difficult. So, they work on their strokes, but a lot of times they're not working on their volleys. So that's the one thing we knew doubles would be very important, controlling that. So those are the type of drills and things we did each and every day. But yeah, it's just the how hard the players hit from the baseline. I think has been one of the biggest changes in the last 30 years. You've got, when you watch the pros, they're serving 130 plus miles an hour, and they're not coming in until they get a short ball, crushing it. Then they might come in.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Mark, did you do, nowadays coaches spend a lot of time on NFHS watching video of other teams in football and basketball. Of course, the teams take them off right away, so you can't watch them. But there's a lot of video work in sports now. Is that a thing in tennis? Would you ever scout another team and see how each of the players play, or was that diving a little too deep?
no, no, we had one of the things, we, as you know, we uh, there was a 14-year period where we made the state finals every year. Um, we won 10 of those 14, but we would have scouting reports. Um, so, like each player, I would give them a binder, and they would keep that binder for the entire year. So, like as soon as they made the team, I would print out a list of the the players, their phone numbers, parents' numbers. They'd put that in their schedule. Um, we would put scouting reports in. Um, if there were times I drove up to Northern Virginia to watch a Northern Virginia final, and I remember one parent telling me I could not, I could not scout. She kept. I just put my chair down, wrote some notes, and she's like, "Who are you?" And I told her who I was. She goes, "You can't be here." I'm like, "I'm watching a match, basketball, football, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody scouts." Well, she goes, "Our team's not scouting." I said, "That's y'all's coach's fault. They didn't come down to watch us, but we're going to watch them." And you pick up a lot just in terms of like, this person is forehand heavy. Um, they got a hard serve. You could attack their second serve. Um, I also know that I had friends in Northern Virginia that would actually go scout for me if I couldn't make it up there. And then what I was saying is, when we played most of our states down in Newport News, we would play the semis on a Friday, finals on a Saturday. So we would scout the other teams on Friday, write up a scouting report. That night after dinner, we would have a team meeting, go over the scouting report with the girls.
Yeah.
So,
Well, coach, you're very much a giant killer in basketball. You're the kind of like you come from the Dick Tarrant school, and
yeah,
that you've put a lot of big wins over huge opponents in your career. Whereas in tennis, you were the giant,
mm.
you were the Goliath. Which do you prefer, being David or Goliath? Did you like your role in basketball as being always looking for the upset, kind of being the overachiever, or did you like tennis when every year you were in the mix for a title?
Yeah, no, you know, no matter what team you're coaching, I think you want to be realistic. And at the beginning of the year, you want to say you want to be the best you can be. So for basketball, there were a number of years where we were trying to get to states. Um, you know, be honest, as the tennis program kept getting better and better, um, if we just got to states, that always wasn't a good year. Um, we tried to, as a coaching staff, figure out what's our potential and let's try to get there. And yeah, I love to win. So I think, being in the limelight and competing for state championships with tennis was always a lot of fun. But, you know, there's nothing like upsetting somebody in a basketball game in front of, 1,000, 2,000 people. Um,
Hmm.
that's very rewarding as well.
Would you like to have a couple of years of with talent like the great George Lancaster, a
Yeah.
fellow Hall of Fame guy, had it at Highland Springs? Would you like to have that kind of talent level for a couple of years just to see what you could have done with that?
Oh yeah. I mean, so I coached AAU when I was right out of college,
Mhm.
and we finished uh, 2 years in a row in the top 10 in the nation
Wow.
in Richmond. Um, so I coached that team differently than I coached my Godwin teams. We were pressing like crazy, uh, shooting it as quickly as possible, that kind of thing. Um, so I got a glimpse of, the hey, this because two of my best players were George Lancaster, Highland Springs players.
Okay. Who,
Um,
who are those who are those players, coach? Do you remember?
Williams and Melvin Jones.
Mhm.
JJ played at Hampton, and Melvin played a couple different, I think, D2 schools. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And by the way, when I got notified about, or when it became public that I was getting into the Hall of Fame, George Lancaster sent me a really nice text message. Um, And so I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
But
Little did George Lancaster, what's that?
classy guy.
Oh, yes. He has a presence that's unbelievable. And little did he know when you guys were going doing battle back in the days that you would join him in the Hall of Fame one day. So
Yeah.
um, that's amazing. Well, we'll get to those battles, but let's talk about Hal Nunnally. I believe he went into the Virginia Hall of Fame last year. I think I was at that
Yep.
ceremony. He
Yep.
was a legendary, good old boy coach at Randolph Macon. I believe when they were Division II as well as when they became three. So tell us a little bit about Hal Nunnally and what you learned from him.
Yeah. So uh, when I was trying to get into college somewhere, uh, I met with Coach Nunley and told him I didn't want to, I wasn't being recruited. I wasn't that good. Um, but I wanted to continue to play basketball. And I was with my parents in his office, and I told him I wanted to be a coach. And he actually gave me um, a John Wooden book. They call me Coach that day. I'm sure I went home and read it, but he told me that he would give me an opportunity to try out for the team, that I would only probably be on the team for 1 year if I made it. And that's all I needed. So I tried out, I made the team. Um, Guy named Rod Wood from,
I've interviewed Rod. Yeah.
he was a year older than me,
Mhm.
and Rick Hancock, they both played with
Charlie
Spring.
Thompson. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, um, by the way, that I played at Douglas Freeman in '81. Back then, only one team made states,
Yeah.
and we lost in the regional final to Marshall Walker, Ronnie Wade, that
Mhm.
went on to ODU. I don't know if you remember, but back then, Jefferson, Huguenot, and Wythe combined for one team. They were in our district. We won the district. Um, Marshall Walker won the region. Armstrong Kennedy was really good. So it was tough getting out to
That was
state.
Willie Jennings. That was William Johnson. That was Eric. That was
Yeah,
a really good Marshall Walker, legendary Marshall Walker team. And then the
yeah,
JHW team that followed that team was great. Those complexes may have been the toughest
yeah.
high school teams in Virginia history.
But we would have made states if they took two back then. Um, we had a kid, Freddie Facca,
Oh
who was
yeah.
a player, played at ODU, but we had some other really good players too. Um, but I know Coach Nunley got those guys from Robert E. Lee Springfield um, to come play for them. Remember, that was D2 back then. So I played 1 year for Coach Nunley, learned an awful lot. Jeff Reynolds was his assistant, who went on to coach Air Force, and I think he's an assistant at Clemson now. But anyway, learned a lot of basketball, and then uh, after this year, I asked about coming back next year. Coach Nunley said, um, "Remember what we talked about? Give you a year," and uh, so I had to do something with basketball. And my senior year of high school, my dad was a professor at VCU. He signed me up for a coaching basketball class, 1 hour. Um, Eddie Goss, I believe, from Thomasdale, and Chip McCool um, were who he was like a part-time assistant or at VCU at the time. They taught the class. So bottom line was um, my sophomore year, when I just turned 19, Amelia Academy was open for basketball. And the headmaster was Bill Pegram, who coached at Hampton Sydney. So I interviewed for the job because Chip and Mr. Pegram were close. I got the job. So for 2 years, my sophomore and junior years at Macon, I drove 55 miles each way to coach basketball, high school basketball. So it was a great learning experience because I would get there early and I would go in the headmaster's office, who was a former college coach, and we would just talk basketball.
Yeah.
So got a lot of, my first year, I was 19 when I got the job. I had two 18-year-olds on the team. It
Yeah.
was just a different dynamic. Um,
Yeah.
but the kids were great, and we were pretty successful there too.
That reminds me when I met Rob. Rob was a coach at Blue Ridge Academy,
Mm.
about 30 miles outside of Charlottesville. He was teaching math and coaching there, and it was great. One thing about your career that's interesting is you didn't spend a lot of time as an assistant coach. You seem like wherever you went, you were a head coach right away, which is
Yeah,
interesting because a lot of people seem to wait years to get a head job. And it
right.
seems like people were always throwing head jobs at you wherever you looked.
So I went back to my alma mater, Freeman, got a teaching job there. That's when I became the boys tennis coach there. And my interview kind of went like this. The athletic director, Jim Sangston, said, Coach Richmond is retiring. You're the new boys tennis coach. There was no go think about it. Back then, um, people coached uh, whether they wanted to or not. And it ended up, you know, changing my life. Um, uh, Loved coaching the boys. The one thing we did, I had a lot of basketball players on my team. And if it rained, we loved a rain day. We'd go in the gym and have basketball games. And it was so much fun.
Yeah.
But I also, it was the first time the tennis players had preseason conditioning where I'd take them on 2 and 3 mile runs, run hills. They weren't used to that. Um, Treated it like a basketball program. But I was an assistant for Coach Parpet for 4 years, and then I got the head coaching job at Godwin when I was about 25. Um,
Was was it hard to leave Freeman?
it was in the standpoint that um, there was a tennis player, Daniel Grennan, who had one more year left, and we'd become pretty close. He eventually played at Davidson, and I hated leaving him for his senior year. Um, but I kind of reminded myself, look, I'm a basketball coach first. That's my first love. I have an opportunity to go to Godwin. Um, and so went to Godwin. And then a couple years later, I became the girls' coach in tennis as well.
Is there a big difference coaching boys as opposed to girls in tennis?
Yes, yes. I,
How,
th-
how
I
how's it different? Yeah.
um. So I learned we used to stretch before tennis practice,
Mhm.
and it's almost like when the bell rings, school lets out, you almost need to let the girls, I think, have 5 or 10 minutes just to get some stuff out that went on during the day. They have things to tell each other. And if you don't give it to them before practice, they're going to keep talking about these things
They'll
during.
take it on. They'll take it on their own.
Yeah. So I learned to give them a little bit of time before we started. Um, both both boys and girls want to be successful. I think any good player wants to be coached, wants discipline. Um, you know, we did some things like, I would make sure that I wrote the girls' notes, um, like before a big match, or, like when we went to hotels for states, I would make sure that I would slide um, a note under the door, so that when they woke up, like, hey, got state championship today, you know. Um, I'm not saying I wouldn't do that for the boys, but I never did. You know, those type of things we did a little bit more of. Um, so,
Yeah.
secret pals, the girls wanted to make sure each person had someone else on the team. So you do certain things like that that might be a little bit different. The boys wouldn't really care that much about having a secret pal.
Yeah. Well, I get the feeling that Mills Godwin is a very special place. Obviously, my roommate Rob is a great guy,
Yeah.
but I was there last year watching the state soccer tournament with my son, the high school, the championships, Final Four, and I met a woman named Penny who
Yeah.
works at Mills Godwin, and I just kind of said, hey, I had my roommate Rob was a teacher here and a coach here, and she was just the nicest person. And everyone I met at Mills Godwin just seemed so nice. Talk a little bit about the culture and the people you met in all those years at Mills Godwin.
Yeah. So um, I was hired by a man named Tom DeBolt, but he only stayed for 1 year. And then um, I think a lot of people at Godwin would say these two people were two of the best ever at their jobs. John McGinty was principal the very next year.
Mhm.
The Commons, the cafeteria, is named after him. Um, Billy Browning became the AD after Ron Axel hired me. Because back then, Ron Axel was the football coach and AD, and then they put the rule in, you know, you couldn't coach
Yeah.
and coach. So Billy Browning became the AD, and working for them for 10 plus years, they were two of the best ever in the state, um, not just locally. So we were very lucky. And I think for teaching wise, I think Godwin became a destination for a lot of teachers. And I was lucky to be able to have a job there. Um, you know, the staff stuck around a great deal, and I taught for 30 years. And we hired along the way people like Penny Stevens, who, if we didn't have a water issue, I would be subbing for her today. Uh, but she's an icon. She is another person that makes Mills Godwin special, you know, having teachers like her.
Yeah. When you
And Rob,
got when you got I'm sorry.
and Rob White.
Yeah, Rob White. Yeah, some guy named Rob White. So when
Hey,
you got the job at Mills Godwin, did you know exactly what kind of coach you wanted to be? Did you have strong opinions? You'd been a head coach in tennis, and you had some experience at Amelia. You played under Hal Nunnally. Did you know exactly what you wanted to do?
I did. I was a little stubborn in terms of like playing only man to man defense for a long time. Um, you know, I told you I was 25 ish when I got the job. My first staff, I was the oldest person on the staff. So Rob White was my assistant. We're the same year, but I'm a couple months older. And then Hunter Thomas, who be took over for me, and uh, very successful uh, basketball coach.
I met Hunter. Mhm.
Yeah, um, his sister and I were soda partners at a program to help young kids in high school. Um, but he was the JV coach, and then Kelly Church, who has won a state championship at Hedgesville, West Virginia, was my ninth grade coach. Um, we just loved working out. We were all single at the time. If a kid asked, "Can you open the gym?" They had our number. We could show up, you know, um, and that's one of the things I think we tried to change was just the availability. You know, we were going to lift in the off season and run, have open gyms. We would play basketball with them, and we all had college friends that were in the area, and they'd come play against our players. So, um, building a culture, building a program. Uh, I think we're, um, you know, I think we did a pretty good job overall.
Yeah, it was always my impression that Richmond in Richmond basketball is bigger than football in the high school level. Is that true? Is it a basketball city, or do you think it's more of a football city?
Um, I think it's interesting. I've been talking to some people. It seems like the good teams have gotten better. There's just a lot more extreme, very good teams, and then there's some programs that aren't very good, whether it's boys or girls basketball or even some football. Um, I can't say. I think with John Marshall, they're going to win the state every year with the players they get.
Well, and also the division that they're in.
Correct, correct. Um, uh, I think it's a little bit harder. I don't see, like, at least this year, it'd be very difficult to win Division 5 or Division 6 in basketball. Um, there's two teams in Division 4 that have a shot, Atlee and Varina. Um, um, Hopewell's good. I forget if they're three
Yeah,
or
I believe they're three.
three.
They're
They,
always good. Yeah.
yeah, they. But anyway, to answer your question, I can't say uh, football or basketball is bigger than the other, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Do you feel like we've lost something? Like in the old days when we played, obviously, you had the heartbreak of not going to state, even though you made the regional final.
Mm.
But with the six classifications, you don't even know which schools are in which class, and you've been following this a long time. So Hopewell doesn't have to face Verina, and Verina doesn't have to face John Marshall. It's just a mess. And we were coming up there. The Central region was a strong basketball region,
Right.
and you knew a good team. And then by 80, I think 7-2 were going to emerge and have a really good chance at the state title. The Tidewater, the Hampton Roads was one. The Eastern region was one region. It was probably the strongest historic region with Hampton and Booker T. Washington. Um, Now we have six divisions. We have John Marshall playing two. It's just a complete mess. At the end of the year, the best team, maybe in the girls is Princess Anne Division 5, and the boys it's at Division 5 that Stephen Welsh coaches. I can't pull the name right now. Anyway, at the end of the season, the questions aren't answered. We don't know who's the best team. We've got everyone's a champion. Do you feel that we've lost something by having all these classifications and all these champions?
Yes, very much so. Um, I used to love the regional basketball tournament. There's four districts, 1 through 4 made the regionals. You know, there were brackets. You knew you were matched up with the central region this year. So during the year, you might go scout them, you know, where you think you might play somebody. Now, like we just said, like I had to try to figure out where's Hopewell again. I don't ever have to see Hopewell because they're Division 3. You know, um, I just don't like it. It changes every 2 years. Every region's different. Godwin is in a region with 15 teams. There's another region with 9.
Yeah.
Why don't they pull 3 from ours to make it 12 and 12? You know, the same for the same thing down at the beach. It's 14 and 10. Why don't they throw 2 teams over, make it 12 and 12? It just, it's so frustrating. Um, I mean, you like to think if your team's good enough, you're going to win states. But like I said, it changes every 2 years. You know, you might go up or down a classification. Um, it now for basketball, only one game is played at the Siegel Center, just the finals. It's just not the same feel at all.
You don't get those double headers where you watch the teams on Fridays, you get to know them a little bit, then you see the final. Taking that away from us. Even in the regionals, all the finals are different places. Like they'll
Right.
have them all at the same time, so you can't watch more than one. Heaven forbid. I know in Prince William County, they'll have 17 teams in their region, and and then and then in the Loudon they'll have 9 teams or 9 and 10 in their region. So you have 2 of 9 teams go to state every year in those regions, and Prince William, it's very hard to advance this. Well,
Yeah.
it's hard to advance the state. It's a mess, and it's very frustrating for us, our fans of the sport. But I've been complaining for years, and no one ever listens to me. So
You,
so
you
and I don't
know,
want to jeopardize your VHSL Hall of Fame here. So let's change the subject. How about the basketball itself? Like when you started coaching in '90, whenever you started, every team may have one or two 3-point shooters. You had one maybe.
right?
Now everyone on the court can shoot 3-pointers. So the
Yeah.
game is very different than when you started. Do you enjoy today's basketball? Is it better than when you started coaching?
I don't know if it's better. It's all you have to do is watch little kids. When they come to my clinic, they just they go straight to the 3-point line, firing up threes, um, whether they can make them or not. Um, you know, with analytics, they're people have figured out you gotta, it's you get more points by making threes. So we're all teaching shooting threes. Sometimes the feeding the ball inside, it's just not happening. So, um, in that respect, we still say um, Hunter Thomas and I both believe that the game is won around the basket, whether it's points or rebounds. So, no matter if you're shooting threes or not, you got to get to the basket. You got to get those extra shots, putbacks, drives, whatever. It's still going to be won around the basket.
Yeah. Well, I think this year's favorite and one of the favorites in Class Six is Oscar Smith, and
Mm,
they're a throwback team. Everything goes inside. They have a couple guys that can shoot, but it'll
yeah,
be interesting to see if it's a defensive team. They go to the hole. It'll be interesting to see if they can win the state without shooting a lot of threes. Even though they have a couple guys who can definitely shoot it. Coach, at one time in your career, you stepped away from coaching basketball, then you came back, took a year off, and came back.
mm,
Do you miss it? Because a basketball coach, it's kind of an all-encompassing job. Football is the same way. Uh, is it something in you that's missing that you're not coaching anymore? Do you really miss those days?
yeah. Of course, I love trying to get a team to perform the best that they can be. Um, love the competitions on Friday nights, and um, you know, you miss that. Um, I've been very, very fortunate. I had health issues. That's why I had to give it up. Um, but Hunter Thomas let me hang around the Godwin program for his entire tenure. So I could come to practice, maybe do a drill for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe um, on good days. But, you know, he'd let me do a drill each day. Um, and then I would sit at the end of the bench and uh, chart something, go in the locker rooms. Um, so now my former player, Raleigh XL, is at Atlee. I kind of do the same thing for him. Um, when I go to Randolph making games, I do a possession chart for Coach Merkel. You know, um, I attend practices. The coaches around here have been very nice to me. I typically can go to a VCU Richmond or Randolph Macon practice anytime I like, and
Yeah.
they're very they're great staffs, and I appreciate that. So I still have my hands in basketball, even though I'm not the one always out there coaching.
Yeah. Well, Coach, when I look back on my basketball coaching career, and it's almost embarrassing to bring it up when I'm talking to a guy going into the Hall of Fame. But there are some teams that I really connected with, and I still remember those teams. I really helped these kids, or for some reason, we were able to overachieve together. Do you have certain teams that are extremely special to you? Maybe because what you achieved, or just because you guys connected and you were able to achieve things that maybe you shouldn't have been able to together, but you were able to do it.
Yeah, so of course I've got like I'm still very close with three of the players that I was they were my seniors my first year at Godwin. Um, Raleigh XL, um, Turner Broughton, and Greg Boston. Um, they all live around here. I go to their houses, to their pools. Um, you know, uh, I've helped coach their kids along the way as well. But like the other night, I was able to get some Duke tickets. I went to see Duke versus uh, who they put Pittsburgh, and I went with one of my former point guards, Alex Robbins, who played at Hampton Sydney. So I'm close to him. I'm close to Josh Soper, who lives in Charleston. Um, my daughters were in their weddings, uh, some of my players' weddings. So of course, I'm closer to some of those players. But that's the beauty of coaching is the relationships that you have. Recently, I've had some health issues where I've had to have a lot of IVs. Um, One of my former tennis players, Abigail Randolph, uh, she's come over to my house and started IVs on me. Um, you know, uh, and if I wasn't close to them, they probably, we wouldn't have that relationship. Um, so, you know, uh, that's the beautiful thing about coaching, and the one of the biggest positives in coaching is when players come back and want to help your program. And I've had a number of former players in basketball and in tennis come back and be an assistant coach. I love that. I really do.
Yeah,
So,
that's great. It means you did a tremendous job, which is obvious. Coach, two more questions. I'm going to let you go. This has been great. I'm glad we've been talking about this for a while, but this is a great opportunity to do this. If you could have one game back as a coach in basketball, what game would that be? I know as a player, I think about ones that I wish I had back. Coaching, there's so many that I want back that I don't even try. But what about you? If you could have one game back as a coach, do something a little bit different, what game would that be?
yeah. Well, we were closest to states back in '98. We won our district. Um, we made it to the regional semis. I think we were up about 8 points going in the fourth quarter against Petersburg. And I'll never forget their first possession. Their big kid banks in a 15 footer from the elbow. It's like there's no way he tried to use the backboard. And it snowballed after that. Like they just got energized. I wish I could play that one quarter over again
Yeah,
because we were that close to states, you know.
yeah.
Um, so that was the closest of any of my teams that got to states. And of course, we had such a great rivalry with Freeman. Um, we lost once, I think 32-31, when they had the ball underneath the basket and they hit a um, a shot off an inbounds play where our player did not switch a screen, which we had just talked about doing, and I just that gym was packed. I kind of wish we could have that over again too, because winning a Freeman Godwin game was always very special.
Yeah. Well, what a great memory. Wish you could have been better, but you
Yeah,
got it all back in tennis numerous times.
yeah,
Last question, Mark. What did it mean to you to be going in? What does it mean to you to be going into the Hall of Fame? When you first found out about it, obviously you really couldn't. You really can't be that surprised with your level of success. But it's still nice to hear it. What was your reaction?
yeah. I mean, as you know, you're not successful without really good players. You know, um, and I had great coaching staffs, and I had players that wanted to get better. Um, and they bought into what the coaching staff, especially me, was selling um, in terms of playing as a team. We're going to win the state championship as a team. My greatest some of my greatest memories are when down in Newport News, we would jump in the James River as a group after winning the states. So I have plenty of pictures of us in the water celebrating after a state championship. But anyway, um, just when I found out, I mean, you know, a lot of coaches put in hard work, and I'm no different. But there's a lot of coaches that I consider to be great coaches that probably will not get in because their record doesn't say that they should get in. And so I'm very humbled that I had enough good players, enough good coaches that we won enough that my school, my program could be recognized. And, you know, I, like I said, very humbled because, you know, when you mentioned Coach Lancaster, Coach Parpet, Coach Sankston, all these Rudy Ward just got in. These are people I looked up to as I, you know, went up the coaching ranks. And now I'm in the same, you know, will be in the same Hall of Fame as them. It's pretty special.
It's really special, Mark. I know you've had some health issues you referred to.
Mhm.
Did it give you a little boost, a little adrenaline, make you feel a little bit? Uh,
Yeah, yeah, like yeah, it certainly did. Um, uh, you know, I can't thank all the people. You know, I don't want to leave anyone out, so I'm not going to name people, but all the people at Freeman and Godwin, you know, other schools like Randolph-Macon that, um, just let me be a part of their programs, and just it's I hope a number of them can come or I can talk to them. You know, that's one of the neat things about something like this is sometimes you see a player or someone else that you haven't seen in a while, or you talk to them, or you message them, and again, the connections and the relationships I've formed over the years. That's the most important thing.
I think that's why we teach and that's why we coach, right? Because uh,
Yeah.
otherwise, there's other things we probably could do. So look, coach, this has been great. Love to see you in person sometime. But I'm glad we got a chance to do this.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe if the times work out, I can even come to the ceremony. But anyway, but it was great seeing you again, and I'm very happy for you. What an honor! And just thanks for your time this morning. This has been great.
Thank you. And you do a great job and really appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate you having me on.
Oh, that's great. Let's do a better job keeping in touch, coach.
Sounds good. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thanks, Mark. All right, buddy. Thanks.